Hello everybody, my name is Derek from Casting from Kayaks. I just want to talk quickly about foam poppers. Okay, I tie the foam poppers because I like to do a lot of bass fishing from my kayak for bass, both large and smallmouth. And I love tying these foam poppers, and I enjoy catching them on flies that I've made. And my flies are very durable. I've been using them for quite a while, and you need a little bit of touch up here and there, but I've never had them break. Now, these are the foam poppers I'm talking about, okay? They're hard foam. You get them from Bass Pro Shop. That's where I picked mine up. And they do come with the hooks as well, okay? The hooks have a bit of a kink in them, and you don't have to use those kind of hooks. You can if you want to. I do. But I've tied them on other hooks, and I've been fine with it. One of the things I like to mention is before I do anything with the foam poppers, I do have them in different kinds and styles here. Okay, like these ones, I do have them here. What I do is I like to get everything set up, and I glue all of my different foam poppers all at the same time. Now, I know some guys use Zap-A-Gap. I don't like Zap-A-Gap for this process because sometimes the gap on these flies are just a little too big. So what I like to do is I like to use epoxy. Now, the epoxy has ups and down sides to it. The up thing is that you can get them at craft stores. They're very cheap, and you get a lot of glue. So I usually buy these things by the handful, and I'll put them away and use them as a fly tie. The thing about this is you will use a lot more than you'll probably need, and you have a very limited window of opportunity. That's the downside of this. The other downside of it is if you don't apply it to the process of the fly tying that I'm going to show you later on other videos, you could wreck up your fly, and it's really hard to recoup. So I like to use this. It's a little bit thicker than Zap-A-Gap, the epoxy. The tips that you need to know is you have to make sure that you keep it upright so that when you mix it on aluminum foil, plastic tins, whatever you wish, you want to make sure you get the air bubbles out of it. And when you squeeze it, you want to squeeze it so that you get both. You want to squeeze it so that you get both the hardener and the epoxy, and you want to mix it and put it all in together. Now, when you mix it, when I mix it, I like to mix it with something thick. I find something too thin, you don't get a good mixture. You really want to mix it like you're scrambling eggs, because you want to make sure that you get a very good base onto the mixture and a good base into the crack. If you don't get the proper mixture, your glue will sometimes be tacky and it'll never dry. Then you pretty much have to go through the whole process again, and it's very frustrating and time consuming to scrape all that gunk off and clean it all up and do it again. So if you use the epoxy, you want to spend at least 30 seconds to a minute mixing it in really well. Now, the epoxy that I'm using turns a little bit yellow when it starts to harden. So what I like to do is when I mix it, I like to apply it as quickly as I can, and as soon as it feels like it's a tacky or a sap or marshmallowy, then I stop. Because if you try to force and get too much glue onto, whether you're adding the glue to the hook or onto the popper, which I'm going to show you later, it could really wreck the fly, and it's very frustrating and time consuming. Okay, so I'll come up with that and show you the different tricks and stuff for that later. Right now, I just want to talk about these foam poppers. I like tying these foam poppers, so what I do is I notice that when I open them up, they're very shiny, and when they're shiny, they have a little lip to it. So what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of fine sandpaper and I like to scuff up the fly. Whether you do it before or after you do your gluing, it's up to you. I like to do it ahead of time, just sand it all down, because I noticed that it has a little lip there. And before, I used to paint and fly tie my lip. I used to use that lip right there as a guideline and paint all of this section here, and then when I put my eyes and my legs in, it looked kind of far back. So it bothered me enough, I wanted to kind of tweak it. So what I've done is I sand this all down. You'll still see that line around the mouth right there. You might see it there, but you'll still see the line around the mouth. But when I feel it, it's very smooth to the touch. So I know that if I do it properly and I go all the way around the fly and it's very smooth, then I know that when I come to paint it, which I'll show you later again, then I know that it's good. You're not going to see it, and it's going to blend in and look really good. Okay, it'll look like one whole piece rather than two pieces melted together. That's just what I do. You can still paint it over it and do whatever you want, but it kind of stands out when you paint it. So I like to sand it all down so it's nice and smooth and get rid of that shine on it. Okay, with that said, I put the hook into the vise on a bit of an angle. I've used my handy dandy epoxy. I've mixed it up with something really well that's thick, so that I move a lot of that epoxy around to get a really good coat. And then once that is done, I'll take my bodkin, my old bodkin here, and as I take the epoxy, and the vise is holding onto my hook, I'll take the epoxy and I'll add it into this crack. And I'll put a little bit more in it. Because this epoxy is a little bit thicker than the Zappy Gap, you can see it, and because it dries fast and is very slow moving, you can actually apply it into the crack, and I'll put enough glue in there to where it comes actually a little past the body, so that when it dries, it has like a little bit of a belly on it, okay? And I'll sand that down later, no big deal. But I'll also take some extra time and I'll put some glue into that crack and around the hook and where the body meets the hook and the foam popper, there, okay? Kind of like what I've done right there. So when I finish my fly and I tie my knots, that will help push it out away from the body a little bit. Okay, that's just what I like to do. So with all that done and everything's all prepped, you want to make sure that you give the epoxy enough time to completely dry, okay? If you're applying it and it looks like it's tacky, and if you see it on your surface that you're using to mix it with and it's starting to change color, stop, okay? Because it will wreck your fly. You can't smooth it, because the whole idea of using the epoxy is because it dries very, very hard and it's quick setting. The window of opportunity to be able to apply it is less than 5 minutes actually by the time you mix it all in and put it on. So it'll take a little while to get used to. You might want to try it on some other surfaces to kind of get a feel for it, or other cheaper used flies. But it takes me a while. I've messed some up as well. But you can sometimes recoup a fly if it doesn't completely harden on you. Sometimes you can get it back to the beginning, so you can redo the process and practice on it again. Okay, so with everything there done with the foam poppers and everything is prepped, the next thing I like to do is sand the popper. The way I like to sand these poppers is I'll wait a day or so for it to completely harden. I'll take the rough edge and the smooth edge, and I'll keep sanding my foam popper down like this, and I'll work it, and then I'll like that. Occasionally I'll come across this side as well. And the reason why I do that is because I want to get that little bit of a belly that I mentioned earlier down, so that when I rub my finger through here, it actually feels like the whole fly. I really can't feel and tell where that spot is. Okay, so that's what I like to do. So when I paint it, that foam looks all like one piece. You don't see the line or the big gap. And then I'll take some fine sandpaper and I'll sand over everything again to get rid of the shine off the epoxy, and just to get rid of some of the burrs and ticks that you might feel on your fly with your hand. Okay, so once you get all of that done and it's all nice and smooth and done, and it's the way you like it, the next step I like to do is I like to keep the fly in the vise, and I like to add my hole for my legs. The reason why I add it into this process now is because later on, when I have my hardener, my nail polish, and all of the stuff on my fly, I don't want to heat my bodkin to push it through and pull it back out, because I don't know how well you can see it on here, but you'll see how you'll get little burrs. Okay, that's like a little burr right there, and you'll see another one right there. What I like to do is, and you'll see it on this one as well, you'll see the little burr. I take some sandpaper, just kind of not worried about being gentle with it. It's going to go through a little bit worse when I'm done with it. Okay? And you should have a nice looking hole. Now if your hole seems to be a little clogged up, you can take your bodkin and run it through, and it should run and go through nice and smooth. Like that, okay? It should go nice and smooth right through. And that's the way it should be, okay? I do that process now because I don't want that little burr, so when I get everything painted and all done, I don't want to have to sand it and start nicking the tarnish and stuff on my fly, okay? So that's what I like to do before I start painting any of my flies. Now the next video I'm going to show is the process that I use for painting, and how I paint it and why I do it that way, okay? So thanks for watching, and wait for the next video, and I'll do the step 2, the second video, to prepping the poppers. Okay guys, thank you for watching. Bye.